Hello and welcome to this South Coast preview between Southampton versus Bournemouth on Thursday at St Mary's. It's going to be a right old battle and we're looking forward to it, and this preview is exciting because I catch up with Jacob Tanswell from The Athletic, previously covered Bournemouth. That is to come very, very soon. But where are we recording this preview? We are at the Queen's Park Golf Club. It's only a stone's throw away from the Vitality Stadium, the home of Bournemouth football being caught, and on a match day you can also take advantage before the game to come and grab a drink and a bite to eat. There's lots of open spaces for you. There's an inside restaurant where it's a Bournemouth themed menu, which I'll show some overlays for you now, so you can get prepared for hopefully a Bournemouth win. You can do it for the final games of this season and next season. And also, you can check them out, details in the description below for all of their links. And the Queen's Park Golf Club are also happy to have suggestions on what you would like to see potentially in the future on the menu. So do add suggestions, but there is a Bournemouth theme there, and get prepared for the game the right way. Now it's time for your match preview of Southampton versus Bournemouth. And I am talking to Jacob Tanswell. Do subscribe, hit the like button, and put your comments below.
Cheeky one, square, and smashed in!
Hello and welcome to this South Coast preview between Bournemouth and Southampton. I've got Jacob Tanswell from The Athletic with me. It's going to be a battle on Thursday night. Jacob, always great to have you on the channel. How you doing?
Good. I always look forward to these games. Like at the start of the season, I was looking at when the away game is, when the home game was, and I always suspected that it might be a relegation battle. But obviously Bournemouth are a few points ahead now, but it's still quite tricky down there.
It is tricky down there. Games are running out. A few points away from survival, I think, but we'll talk about that more in detail. Do subscribe to Cherries Red Army, hit the like button, and get your comments below if you're a Southampton or a Bournemouth fan. Is it a derby?
If you want to call it a derby, but Southampton fans don't.
No, apparently not, but let's have a little bit of fun. We might as well start last weekend, or the recent games that have just gone over the weekend. Southampton kicked off the Premier League weekend with a draw at Arsenal. Now, you probably went up there with a lot of fans with not a lot of expectation. They took an early lead, which Bournemouth can relate to. They went 2 goals up, which Bournemouth can relate to. They were pegged back, though, and Arsenal did steal a point. 3-3. Disappointed at the end?
Yeah, it was a weird atmosphere. Thanks to Aaron Ramsdale for giving Southampton a head start, but I think when you go to Emirates, you get a draw. 2 draws against Arsenal this season. The only team in the league to have done that. It's good, but at this part of the season, the context behind it, you drop 2 points when you're 3-1 up in the 88th minute, and that's the difficulty for Southampton. And the full-time whistle, the atmosphere was definitely before that. Arsenal were murderous, really, that last 8 minutes, and then it just fell flat like a balloon had been taken out. Both teams looked dejected, and it's up to Southampton now to try and get back on and get those 3 points.
I know in the post-match interviews, I think WARD-PROWSE said that actually it shouldn't be looked at negatively, that they drop deep, and it does happen in football. It's really weird how you get that momentum, you'll play really well for 60 minutes, we did it at Arsenal, and then suddenly you just drop 50 yards and you just invite pressure, and good teams eventually break you down. But when you are right at the bottom and you need points and you've got it in the grasp of your hands, do Southampton fans see that as a positive, dropping 2 points?
Probably not now, and it was all because of the context behind the game. At this part of the season, you needed that victory, and I think there's always been that issue with Southampton players that they're fragile mentally, that they can't stand up in those tough moments. But they managed to in the end, but it's still 3-3 draw. I think it's a little bit different to your game at Arsenal, because I saw the heat maps or the average position maps. You were very deep, but I think Southampton tried to stay as high as they could, even with that back five. That last 12, 13 minutes, with Odegaard and all those Arsenal players throwing forward, the natural instinct is just to retreat, isn't it?
Yeah, they nearly threw it away as well, didn't they, right at the end? Theo Walcott was also on the score sheet, an ex-Arsenal player and someone that's starting to play in the starting lineups of Southampton. Is this a player that deserves his space and should have been in the team earlier?
Yeah, it's incredible. 3 or 4 months ago, if you said to me that Theo Walcott would be the Southampton's most important player, I would have absolutely laughed because he was out of the squad under Ralph, under Nathan Jones, and Ruben Selles brought him in because Southampton's got a lot of players. They've got 30, second behind Chelsea in terms of the biggest. But Walcott, he values his experience, he values his leadership, and there's been a few players this season, especially in the last couple of months, where there's been question marks over their attitude, their approach. But Theo Walcott leads by example, and in the youngest team in the Premier League, having Theo Walcott to go with James WARD-PROWSE is crucial to the experience.
So for Bournemouth, it was a good opportunity to relax over most of the weekend, see Southampton drop more points, then we saw other teams drop points. It was generally a pretty good weekend for Bournemouth. Fans of the Cherries went into the West Ham fixture very confident. We've got a matchday vlog that you can check out on the channel. Pre-match, 2-1 to Bournemouth, 2-1 to Bournemouth, 2-1 to Bournemouth. I predicted a 2-2. I didn't think we'd win that fixture because our whole season's been a bit of a mixed bag, as we know, and we know that we've got an inexperienced head coach similar to Southampton, but it really did go a little bit pear-shaped. It took 5 minutes for Antonio and West Ham to dominate the game. Set pieces for Bournemouth were really poor, and we know that we're statistically poor all season from that point of view. And the biggest thing for me is I can deal with potential missed passes. You can try and learn on that in training. Obviously, we should be learning about defending and zonal, whether it's zonal or man marking. Not showing desire, not battling when you're 3 points potentially from safety, I can't deal with. And I just felt that team, Bournemouth team, did not fight. What was your thoughts on that 4-0 to West Ham?
I was surprised because Bournemouth have got momentum. I saw the scenes last week at Tottenham. I thought you'd bounce straight into this one. But what made me laugh not from a sad perspective for Bournemouth, but was Jack Stevens and Mikel Antonio. Because there's always been this running joke amongst Southampton fans that every time Stevens plays Antonio, he gets absolutely bullied.
Wow.
Because West Ham would bypass Ralph's press, go long, and Jack Stevens would be up against Antonio, and he'd just bully him and muscle him. And I obviously haven't seen the full game yet, but I suspect something similar may have happened. We've seen Bournemouth's set-piece issues this season, even last year at times. So I'm not surprised about it, but if we look ahead to the Southampton game, you're going to be quite fortunate because Southampton are equally terrible defending set-piece as well. But yeah, I think it's a bit of a damage to your survival hopes, but 3 or 4 more points, you'll be fine.
Yeah, it wasn't great, and even in the second half there were a mixture of changes. I think Smith come off to prevent him being available for Southampton because he's on that last yellow card for a suspension, and Kiefer Moore come off the bench. And what was the purpose of that? Was Kiefer Moore coming off to help us defensively? Was he coming off to try and score us goals? But we're already 3-0 down, and yeah, it's back to the not really knowing what the decisions were with Rothwell coming out as well, and he's our driving force in the midfield. And in the stands was Ruben Selles. Now, the last thing we want to do is give some sort of positive reaction or influence to Southampton. And Ruben Selles is sitting there. Does he have a little bit of a grin on his face?
He would have, but if you've seen his tenure so far, it's been characterised by big results, big performances against Tottenham, against Man United, against Chelsea, against Arsenal.
Yeah.
But then they didn't lose any of those games. But then they lose to Leeds, they lose to Crystal Palace, you lose to Forest, Wolves, all down there. Yeah. And that is the issue. And I think the way Bournemouth play, especially if you sit deep, that's always caused Ruben Selles issues. So although he'll look at the 4-0, see the atmosphere around the ground, he'll think Bournemouth are going to cause us issues on transition, lower block. So I don't think he would have been too carried away.
Because a lot of fans do think that the problems Bournemouth have had is when we've been asked questions and when we've got to break teams down. Where when we played Liverpool or Tottenham and they've come at us, we've then counter-attacked, been able to turn in numbers. Is that a similar theme with Southampton then? Is if you ask them questions, they struggle. But if you create spaces because other teams are attacking in numbers, you can then counter-attack that as well.
It is, but I think one difference is that Selles wants Southampton to be quite possession-based. He wants them to try and break them down. He doesn't really play with a striker at the moment. He plays with 2 number 10s, so he's trying to be like Pep from last year, where I look at Bournemouth and you've got a lot of pace on the counter. They've brought a lot of players that are dynamic, and that's something different to Southampton. But the same issue is that he can't break down that low block. And when they're playing at St Mary's, after 10-15 minutes, the atmosphere goes, falls flat, there's booing, and it just feels like if Bournemouth can take advantage of those first 15 minutes, just weather the storm, then you'll start to play on some of Southampton's nerves.
So many similarities, because I see that at Dean Court, and you would have seen this previously as well. We can be the 12th man, but if the game is sort of not going the right way in the doors, like against West Ham, the atmosphere dies, and sometimes the fans really do need to help the players. That was the fixtures of last weekend. The fixture previously between the teams, I think it feels a long time ago, and I remember seeing you actually at Dean Court for this fixture, and if I can recall, and I think I'm correct, and if I'm not, I apologise, I think we were on the unbeaten run with Gary O'Neill, and he was sort of just letting the shackles off, putting arms around the players, play with freedom. We went into this game, and I can remember Southampton not being able to buy a win. Ralph was probably hanging on by a thread. This might have been his nail in the coffin. And Gary O'Neill set us up weird. He changed everything. He tried to be a bit clever. I can remember Tavernier playing on the wrong side. I can remember for a back three. And then as the game went on, we changed formation 2 or 3 times in that first half. Southampton took the lead. We really played into Southampton's hands. Southampton got the win, which might have been their first win in a long time. And it started that whole theory in the back of your head, if Gary O'Neill gets this job long term, is this what we're going to see? But it was not a great day for Bournemouth. We lost 1-0 to Southampton, and Ralph kept his job for a little bit longer.
Yeah, that would have been Ralph Hasen's last if he didn't get that win. Southampton were terrible before that. They weren't even that good during the game. They got that early goal. But I just remember Bournemouth switching systems, and there was never any point where I felt that they were sustaining the pressure, putting Southampton under pressure at all. I thought Southampton were quite comfortable, really, for a large part of that, even though they didn't really do much themselves. I just looked at Bournemouth and I thought Gary O'Neill was trying to be a little bit clever, but also just felt like around the ground, it felt like we can really beat Southampton. I think he played up too much.
Yeah.
When you really take all emotion out of it, I think this is the worst team in the Premier League. With a manager under huge pressure, let's just play the game rather than the occasion. I think that kind of got to Bournemouth in the end.
But there has been some more manager changes. We know we had Jacob Tanswell on a debate show with Mark McAdam a few weeks ago, and Nathan Jones came in. That didn't quite work. I loved that appointment, by the way, as a Bournemouth fan. I didn't think that one would go well at all. And I follow a few Southampton podcasters who really didn't buy into it either. I don't think he really won any matches, maybe one, and that didn't last very long. And then the Ruben Sellers feels very similar to the Gary O'Neill. So bring us up to speed in that transition. I know you spoke about it in the debate, but where we've got to with regards to Southampton and still bottom of the league.
Yeah, it's been a mess really for a lot of the season. A lot of indecision, as I alluded to earlier. A lot of players. It just caused a number of bad decisions that have led to this point. It's probably been a gradual decline over the last 3 or 4 years. Arsenal did fantastically well to keep them up, but it just feels like right now they're paying the price of it all. Nathan Jones won 1 Premier League game against Frank Lampard's Everton, so that tells you quite a lot. And Southampton, as I said to you earlier, he wasted 2 pre-seasons in 1 season. He had the whole of the World Cup break, and after 20 minutes in the first game back, he threw the formation out the window. Ruben says there's a feeling amongst players, amongst friends of theirs, is that if he was there from the start, Southampton wouldn't be in this position. He's probably the best. The players really like him. Staff really like him. If he kept Southampton up, he'd probably be given the job full time. He's a very clever man. He's got a lot of experience, despite only being 39. He's coaching 9, 10 different countries. He's trying to go back to the way Ralph was, the best aspects of Ralph. So I think there's a lot of buy-in from the players, but it just feels like, is it just too late at this moment?
Does he keep his job then if they go down? Because that's a similar question mark with regards to Gary O'Neill.
I think some people would want him to stay because they can see what he's trying to do, maybe give him a year in the Championship. But then there's also an argument thinking, Ruben worked under Nathan Jones and Ralph. Let's just throw everything. Let's have a fresh start completely. And I can see both sides, but I think ultimately the decision we made on how Southampton finished the season.
Yeah. Now you predicted in that debate show for Bournemouth to go down. They were in the bottom 3, and it was probably a fair comment at the time. What's your thoughts on Gary O'Neill, which I think this is very similar themes for Southampton and Bournemouth. Obviously, he had his mixed bag of results and summary before the World Cup. I was surprised he got the gig full time. I think Bournemouth had a very good opportunity with the new ownership. They knew money was going to go in the January transfer window to bring in a new sort of progression. But they went with Gary O'Neill, and I think the theme has been very similar. He has picked up results. We have had some wins against Liverpool and Tottenham, and we turned it around against Fulham. These are teams that we played at the right time, in my opinion. I mean, beating Leicester a few weeks ago was a perfect time to play them. But when you look at Gary O'Neill and Southampton, fans potentially look at Gary O'Neill on this Bournemouth side? What's the perception you're getting?
I don't think I see a longer term project in Gary O'Neill. I don't think I could see him building layers to this team next year, evolving the style of play. I think what the hierarchy did with Bill Foley coming in, I think he wanted a safe bet. He wanted a safe pair of hands that he knew what was happening. If he's going to invest all this money, he made sure that they didn't want to get relegated in that first year. And the way Gary O'Neill plays, obviously he takes advantage of teams on the counter-attack. That probably can get you through year one in the Premier League. It's just whether he can add to it. And Bill Foley's ambition is to become in top 8, top 6 eventually. Gary O'Neill probably can't do that, and that's why he signed an 18-month contract, and that kind of tells you what their club's thinking. And I wouldn't be surprised, even if Gary O'Neill keeps Bournemouth up, that he would be changed in the summer or in October, the first international break. But I see Bournemouth that have done incredibly well to stay up, because how many people were predicting to go down, and the fact that you're so comfortable now with this many games is fantastic. But from a Bournemouth fan's point of view, you want to see good style, you want to see a progressive style, and I can kind of see the jarring between keeping you up but also being entertained as well.
I think what I've always said all along with Bournemouth, and I know you probably keep an eye on it with your time that you covered for Bournemouth previously, is that at the start of the season, Scott Parker, not many signings, and someone said to me, take 17, well, snap your hand off. Yeah. As the seasons evolve, which always happens, you get the new ownership with the direction, new stadium potentially, new training ground, going to do that, nail that straight away, we're going to pump money in. Bill Foley's coming out saying we're not getting relegated, so don't even panic, you were there. So as the seasons evolved, and you look at the Premier League, which is one of the most weirdest Premier League scenes I've ever seen, so many declines of very good clubs. I now look at us where we are and think any appointment has us where we are right now. I think as a squad, with the other clubs around us that are not achieving what they should be achieving, we are about right. And I don't think we're one of the 3 worst clubs in this league, which is why I think any appointment keeps us up. And I always go back to the point which you've probably highlighted, is it's always been long term for me. What's the vision? What's the style of play? I want to relate to it. And at the moment, and it's only fair to say, Gary O'Neill probably doesn't know this, because he's only been a coach and out of his playing career for 3 years.
Yeah. Bournemouth, obviously, I think they've spent incredibly well, much better than what Southampton have done, and they spent similar amounts of money in January. But you've got to look at the teams in that relegation scrap. Everton, Leeds. Bournemouth are by far, I hope you don't mind saying it, the smallest club in there. And if you're not a Bournemouth fan, everyone on the outside, with not as clued up as you guys, will think Bournemouth should go down. So I think if you look from that perspective, you think, well, they've done incredibly well. Then your point is true. Is you've spent a lot of money, got a lot of good players, you see weaknesses of all the other teams, and you want to keep progressing, you want to keep going. But what I like about this Bournemouth team is that these players know what their roles are. Like, I went to the Leicester game, and Dominic Solanke, he blew me away again, because the running he does, the pressure. I wish Southampton had a player that, when under pressure, when the fans are a little bit tense, someone that just runs in behind. He might not get the ball, or he might not do much with it, but he just relieves the pressure. And these small things count. And you see Phil Billing with the goals he's produced. Adam Smith's leadership, even though he's probably seen better days. All these little aspects, I think, keeping Bournemouth up, but it always goes back to the point. Can you keep progressing? And Bill Foley will want you to do that.
Yeah, and I just can't accept some other outsiders who say we're punching, because I don't think that's 100% correct, but I do take your valid point and your knowledge as well. Talking about Southampton players, then, do talk to me about some of the signings they did make. Alcaraz, I think, scored on Friday, and James Ward-Prowse is allowed to leave Southampton if they don't stay up.
Yeah, I think that's quite obvious. James Ward-Prowse, I don't expect him to be Grayson Rotherham next year. Charlie Alcaraz is by far the best player Southampton signed in January. He signed 5 players. 4 of them don't really play. Charlie Alcaraz plays. He's got a good engine. He runs forward. He's that box-to-box midfielder that gets goals. Helps out James Ward-Prowse in the goal-scoring department. But you look at the other players they've signed. They spent 45 million on deadline day on Kamaldeen Sulemana and Paul Onuachu. And Sulemana's started about 4 games, one actually started 1. Yeah. They've not made any impact really, and when you're spending that amount of money, you need to come in, hit the ground running. It just feels like Southampton have kept building to the squad. They're not really sold as many players, or let as many players go. And you've now got a lot of players that are all exactly the same. And however much they've tried to, the burden is still on James Ward-Prowse to deliver not only goals. Yeah. If you see all the statistics, he's top of every single thing apart from saves. Yeah. And it's really telling and quite sad in a way.
I actually put a tweet out saying if they let him go, I'd have him, because Bournemouth don't score any free kicks or penalties. Literally, we're toffee. And some people said to me he doesn't get into our team because he doesn't do anything else apart from that. I mean, he must do a little bit more.
He'd be captain of Bournemouth, I'll tell you that for free.
I'm sure he probably would get in our team. Talk to us about predicted lineups then ahead ahead of Thursday. We are a few days ahead. Presser's not out yet, so don't pin this all on Jacob. But if you were able to tell me what you think the starting lineup would be from the goalkeeper.
So Ruben has 30 players, but he's trying to garner a squad that he relies on 15 players.
Right.
So Bazunu will be in goal. He's struggled this season. He's only first year in the Premier League, but he'll be in goal. Romain Perrault left back. Kyle Walker-Peters right back. Centre backs will be Jan Benrick if he's okay after concussion on Friday night, and Armel Bella-Kotchap. And this is where I think Southampton could threaten Bournemouth in that midfield with WARD-PROWSE and Romeo Lavia, who will be going on to bigger things. Both will leave in the summer. Then you'll have the three number 10s almost, Elianusi, Charlie Alcaraz, and Walcott. And then you have Suleiman as well. So there's a little bit of pace. Yeah. It's got a good balance, but they haven't got that cutting edge, and they need to find that on Thursday night.
For Bournemouth, there's no Jack Stephens. He's on loan, so we pretty much know that. Before I talk about Bournemouth's predicted 11, what you think that might be from my perspective, Jack Stephens. I mean, the Southampton fans gutted that he's not part of their squad. I mean, apart from the West Ham result, he's been flawless. He did struggle on Sunday against West Ham and Antonio, but he's been flawless, and it's quite amazing that Southampton are in the relegation zone and what they probably could do with is good defenders.
Yeah, I think Stephens and Hudson as well, a strained relationship towards the end was probably contributed to him leaving on loan. Yeah. Stephens has always been quite good. He's always been quite good on the ball, quite polished. For 88 minutes, he's usually quite good, but there's always been that big mistake in him. And there's always been that feeling that after 6-7 years in the first team, he's not quite kicked on. And for both parties, it's probably right for a fresh start. But yeah, I like what Stephens is doing. I think Southampton fans are looking throughout the course of the season, not so much missing his performance on the pitch. They're looking at his leadership, and if WARD-PROWSE was to go next season, who's got Southampton DNA that can lead next year? Who's going to be the experienced players? There won't be any left. So they're probably thinking, Jack Stephens, bring him back in the Championship if he wants to come back, just for that leadership and knowing the club, because he's always set the standards, he's always got a good approach. It's just whether he'd want to come back.
Yeah, and I know a lot of Bournemouth fans probably want to sign Jack Stephens permanently. I think if we're in the Championship, because I don't think we get relegated, it'll be a car crash if we get relegated from here. I think he'd be a very good player in the Championship. I do fear for Jack Stephens as a Bournemouth player if we stay in the Premier League, because I think Sabani will have to step up. You have got Chris Mepham, I think is a good defender. There's a question mark over Lloyd Kelly, and Senesi as well will be a lot more ready for another Premier League season, with this season being a settling season for Senesi. For Bournemouth then, my predicted 11, I think there will be some changes. We obviously sort of moved around with the 3 and 4 again. I mean, I know we get some wins as Bournemouth fans with a back 3, but long term it never really works out. I mean, did it ever work out in the Championship? Not really. We had a few wins, didn't we? But it never works out with a back 3. I think we'll go back to a back 4, Jacob. I think Neto will keep his place. He conceded 4 goals, but he has been pretty solid, and our captain. I think Smith will stay at right back, and the reason he came off, I think it will be Senesi and Mepham as the centre backs, and then I think Vina starts. I think Lloyd Kelly had a terrible day, a day to forget. There is an option that Lloyd Kelly can come in, but I think Senesi needs to come in, and I like the balance of the left and the right footer. So I think we'll go with that. I think Lerma will play. I think Rothwell will be back in again, billing ahead, hopefully, as close to Dom Solanke. Then wide, if fit, I'd like to see Tavernier and Dongo come back in. For all of Christie's endeavour and effort, statistically, he adds barely nothing. And I think Christie's been brilliant, but we really need numbers. And I'd like to see Dongo back in this team. And I think that we should be attacking Southampton as much as they might attack us, with Dom Solanke up top. Look, Dom Solanke's on a run rate where he probably scores at 1 more goal this season, but he adds more than that. He's got probably the most assists for Bournemouth this season as well. That's my prediction. It's a back 4. There is a few question marks in whether Gary will go with a natural left back in Vina, but we do definitely need to change something from West Ham.
I look at it from a Southampton perspective, and I think they'll try and target Adam Smith. They always try and create overloads on one side. Usually it's on the other side with Kyle Walker-Peters. But I look at Adam Smith, I saw him against Fulham. I thought he's not quite sharp as he used to be 1v1. Doesn't really get forward as much anymore. He hasn't got that overlapping like he did in the Championship. But I see also pace on the counter, and I think the way Gary O'Neill will play it, low block, Kyle Walker-Peters and Perrault are so high. They're like right wingers, and it's there's space in behind. And you look at Dongo, look at Solanke, and that's where you're quite concerned from a Southampton perspective.
Yeah, so we'll have to see what those predicted lineups are, and do put yours in the comments if you want, because we're going to come to those score predictions in a bit. Now, the last time we went to St Mary's, in the Premier League was in the relegation season. We were doing pretty well, actually. It was early on in the season. I was there, and I think it was a Friday night. It was the first ever win for Bournemouth at the St Mary's. Callum Wilson capitalised on a goalkeeper error. I don't know if you can remember this, but Bournemouth won 3-1. It was a great night for us Cherries, and it's the only time we've ever won. And we'd love to do it again, Jacob. Can you remember that game?
Yeah, I was there. I remember Southampton changing formation about 4 times in the first half because, Slanky started that game and he hadn't scored yet, but I remember him causing a few issues, and that last goal was that Callum Wilson tapped in and Angus Gunn was sat there stranded. And it must have been
by Gunn, it was.
It must have been incredible that away end, seeing the limbs, as you're saying. But yeah, from a Southampton perspective, it wasn't great, and I think that first few months of the season was that Bournemouth game, but then also the 9-0 against Leicester, so it was quite a harrowing first few months at St Mary's.
It was one of the things that Eddie Howe really wanted to do, was to beat Southampton at Southampton. I think it's our only ever win in the league at St Mary's, and I can remember that Callum Wilson goal, and Josh King had just been substituted, I think, and he was trying to walk off the pitch, and Callum Wilson grabbed him after he sort of capitalised on that gun error, and it was absolute limbs. But I mean, Southampton fans, they're not going to want to see a repeat of that, are they? No,
but in fairness, Southampton have had a lot of success against Bournemouth in 5-6 years.
Away.
I think even when Bournemouth got relegated as well, that Sam Surridge VAR disallowed goal, Southampton put another nail in the coffin there. So I think they've had a lot of success at the mentality. Yeah. But it's just, remember that 3-3 draw, was it? A couple of years before that?
Yes.
That was a really good game.
Yeah, I can remember that game, and Dan Gosling, I think, was the goal scorer, and it was a move from our own half, and it was one of the best moves we've ever seen. It doesn't go down as the greatest Bournemouth goal, because there's some really great goals, Charlie Daniels at home against Manchester City, but it was a great move. But yeah, a great game. We didn't win, but it was a step towards winning at St Mary's.
And also, I think Southampton were quite happy at the time as well, because I think they needed a point to stay up. So they got that, and both fans left okay.
Right, think about your score prediction then, Jacob, for Thursday. We did that debate video. Yeah. Where are you at now with this league? Leicester under Dean Smith look like they've given themselves a chance. Did Sean Dyche do enough on Saturday for Everton getting a draw at Crystal Palace? Where are you at with your predictions? 6-7 games to go.
Do you know, I'm going to be honest, I was on a podcast, the Saints podcast yesterday, and I predicted Southampton will win 3-0. I don't know what made me do it. I honestly don't think that, but I'm just going to stick with it because I think Bournemouth would like to hope, as long as they don't make it as an occasion, just play the game, but I think they will play the occasion. I think you'll want to come to Southampton, condemn them to another relegation, do what Southampton did to you a couple of years back. And I do think Southampton are due a performance at home, free scoring one. They've had a lot of chances in some games, but they've not quite capitalised on that. I think if they can get an early goal, I think the crowd will completely be transformed, and I think it'll be a good bounce. But I don't think it'll be 3-0, but I'm going to go 3-0, more hope.
I'm also thinking about what the atmosphere might be like there, because I know, as I said, I know some podcasters who are already frustrated, and the fixture itself. Now, I know a few weeks ago we were trying to calculate whether we could relegate Southampton. We can't do that, but with the potential frustrations if Southampton don't perform internally, and Bournemouth may be doing a job on Southampton, what could the atmosphere be around St Mary's internally and externally at full time?
It's been quite bad in previous weeks. I think Nottingham Forest in January, which was Nathan Jones' third game, was horrendous. Boos, screaming, people throwing things on the pitch. But their last home defeat against Crystal Palace, there was apathy, like an acceptance that Southampton were going to go down. It's quite quiet. But I think the fact that if they lose again after the Arsenal positive draw to Bournemouth of all teams, they'll think, I think the atmosphere could be toxic again. And I'll look to my right and I'll see the Bournemouth away end, and you'll see completely two different moods.
Right, my score prediction. So I didn't think we'd beat West Ham because I didn't think we'd win 3 games in a row. Although West Ham, Southampton, Leeds on paper look like winnable games, I also didn't see 5 green ticks appearing through that spell. So what I was thinking is, don't lose West Ham. We did, but get a draw. But because we lost to West Ham and so bad, I actually think I'm going to jump on the train, the roller coaster, which is Gary O'Neill, and I would not be surprised if we win and become these world beaters again that some media talk about. I'm going for a Bournemouth 2, Southampton 1, and it'll be our second time to win at St Mary's. It's finely balanced. I don't think, it's definitely not a game Bournemouth want to lose. Is it over for Southampton if they lose on Thursday?
100%, yes. Southampton are looking now, they need to get a positive result, a win against Bournemouth or nothing. and then they've got to beat Fulham somehow, and then they've got to go to Forest and beat them, and then they've got to somehow hope they'll get a point at either Newcastle or Liverpool. So there's a tough ask, but if they don't beat Bournemouth, then everything else is futile.
You predicted Bournemouth to go down many weeks ago. I think we're 3 points away from safety. Even Gary O'Neill can win one more football match, because he can win football matches, by the way. Do Bournemouth stay up now?
100%, yeah. They stay up. I said Bournemouth because I looked at Gary O'Neill's and I thought, is he capable of going on that run? But I think the way Bournemouth are, their attitude, the players' attitude, I think is remarkable. And I've really liked seeing Bournemouth, even if they are quite pragmatic sometimes. I think they'll stay up, and I think it'll be Leeds that will join Southampton and Forest.
Yeah. It is a fair comment at the time. It was definitely a fair comment. I actually think Bournemouth, potentially with the games ahead, could get on about 39 points. But we'll have to see. Jacob, it's been great to have you on this preview on the channel. What sort of coverage have you got coming up for Bournemouth fans to check out your stuff between now and kick-off?
Yeah, so I think there'll be a lot on the Athletic in terms of seeing that rivalry. We're going to have a look at whether Southampton have ever been below Bournemouth in a league before. So there'll be a lot to come, and obviously the match report as well, which will include a lot of Southampton stuff, but also we'll look at the Bournemouth stuff, obviously, with them having no reporter as well.
Yeah. We hope you've enjoyed this match preview. Do show your love in the comments, because I know a lot of Bournemouth fans do love reading Jacob's stuff, and also get your score predictions in there, subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Thank you very much, Jacob.
Pleasure.
Enjoy the day. Might see you there, might get you on the match day vlog, probably not, but if we capture you we will. But thanks very much. Make sure you do subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. We'll try and get a match day vlog for Southampton out as quickly as possible, but we've got Leeds coming very quickly after that. But do make sure you follow the channel and hit the like button. Thanks for checking out this video. We'll see you on the next one. Up Cherries.